It was a night that seemed to weep with the heavens themselves, rain cascading down like the grief of the forgotten, soaking the streets, washing away the neon reflections of a world that never seemed to care. On that desolate bridge, with the city lights blurred through a curtain of tears and storm, a single dad named Ethan walked slowly, his steps heavy with both the water filling his shoes and the burdens of his life. In one arm, he carried his little daughter, Lily, wrapped tightly in a worn red blanket to shield her from the cold, though he himself had no such protection. His jeans were torn not from fashion but from hard work, his shirt clung to him, damp and heavy, yet his grip on his daughter was steady, as though she was the only anchor keeping him from drowning in despair. Ethan had been struggling ever since Lily's mother had walked away 2 years ago, leaving him with nothing but unpaid bills, sleepless nights, and a child who looked up to him with eyes too innocent to see the weight on his shoulders. He worked odd jobs, fixing cars, hauling boxes, cleaning gutters, anything that put bread on the table, though the table itself was often bare. Tonight, he had just finished another long day of rejection and fatigue, denied once again for a stable job he desperately needed. He walked home in silence, his daughter's soft breathing against his chest the only comfort he had in the storm. But then, as he crossed the old bridge, his tired eyes caught sight of something that shook the fatigue out of him. There, at the edge of the railing, clinging to the iron bars with trembling hands, was a young woman in a white dress soaked through by the rain. Her hair was plastered to her face, her lips quivered, her eyes red from crying. She leaned forward dangerously, staring down into the rushing black water below as if it was calling her name. Ethan froze, his heart racing. He knew that look, that posture, that silent scream for help. For a brief second, he remembered nights when he had thought about giving up himself, when everything had felt too heavy, when he wondered what the world would care if he simply disappeared. But then Lily's small hand had reached for him, and he had known he couldn't. Tonight, he saw the same storm in that girl's eyes, and without thinking, he shifted Lily in his arm and stretched his free hand out toward the girl. His voice cracked through the rain, not loud but powerful enough to pierce the night. "Don't jump," he said, his tone carrying both desperation and authority, the voice of someone who understood too well what she was feeling. The girl turned her head slightly, her tear-streaked face illuminated faintly by the street lamps. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak but no words came out, only a sob carried away by the storm. She looked at his hand, then back down at the water, then at the child in his arm. Ethan's grip tightened. "Please," he added, his voice softer now, almost breaking, "don't do it. Not tonight. Not like this." The girl trembled, her body weakening against the railing, and for a terrifying moment it looked as though the weight of her pain would pull her over. Ethan stepped closer, straining his arm across the rail. "Take my hand," he urged, his eyes locked on hers. "I know you don't know me. I know you don't trust me. But I can't let you go. Please, take it." For a second that stretched into eternity, nothing happened. The rain continued its relentless beating, Lily shifted in his arms, and the night seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, the girl extended her trembling hand and touched his. That was all he needed. With a sudden surge of strength, Ethan pulled her toward him, gripping her arm tightly, hauling her away from the edge. She stumbled into him, collapsing against his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. He held her, balancing his daughter in one arm and the broken stranger in the other, rain washing over all three of them as though trying to cleanse away their pain. Ethan whispered softly, though his words were barely audible through the storm. "You're safe now. I've got you." The girl shook her head weakly, her sobs drowning his words. "Why did you stop me?" she choked out, her voice filled with despair. "You don't know what I've lost. You don't know what I've been through." Ethan looked at her, his jaw clenched, his own memories flashing before his eyes, nights of hunger, of loneliness, of holding his daughter as she cried for a mother who never came back. "You're right," he said quietly. "I don't know your story. But I know what it's like to want to end the pain. And I know what it's like to keep going, even when it feels impossible. And I know this little girl in my arms deserves to see you live, just like she deserves to see me keep fighting. Maybe we both need a reason tonight. And maybe that reason is saving each other." The girl looked at him through her tears, her breathing ragged, her body trembling with exhaustion. She glanced at the child in his arms, innocent, wide-eyed, holding on to her father with trust unbroken by the world's cruelty. Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of light breaking through the storm in her soul. Ethan guided her away from the railing, leading her to a bench under one of the lampposts. They sat there in silence for a long time, the rain easing but their hearts still heavy. Finally, Ethan asked gently, "What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Isabella." That single name carried with it a world of pain and mystery, and Ethan knew that this encounter was only the beginning of a story far larger than himself. What he didn't know was that Isabella was not just a stranger. She carried a secret, one that would soon change both of their lives forever. And as the rain finally began to fade, Ethan sat with his daughter and the broken girl he had pulled back from the edge, unaware that this night of despair would become the turning point of his destiny. Dear viewers, this was only the beginning of Ethan and Isabella's journey. If you want to know the shocking truth about who she really was, and how this encounter would transform everything, make sure you don't miss the next part of this powerful story. Subscribe now, so you can walk with them through heartbreak, healing, and the miracle that fate had hidden just beyond the storm.